Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it is another video in my 2023 NFL offseason prediction series. Today it's the Tennessee Titans. Make sure to thumbs up this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment in the comment section as well. How about with those algos? And the Titans, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. You can go look at my reassessment of my initial power rankings from the preseason video where I had the Titans literally 7-10. I knew they would disappoint. A lot of people had this like delusion almost about them, but I saw them. I was like, man, when Harold Landry went down, I was like, they've lost a lot more than people think. Their ability to control a game is kind of gone now because you have to rely on Bud Dupree to be your number one edge rusher. That's not going to work, and it did not. And there's only so much Mike Vrabel can do when you have a passing game that looks inept, when you didn't dedicate to the offensive line like you should have so that your team can run properly through your best player, Derrick Henry. It was just a lot of, I think they passed along a lot of the responsibility that they had to make the team better and not just replacing guys that they were losing, like replacing A.J. Brown with Treylon Burks. You knew you were going to get less production, but they didn't really do anything about that. To go and get Robert Woods, who you knew wasn't going to be playing for a lot of the season. You knew was coming off some serious injuries. Then you kind of just threw a flyer at Kyle Phillips from UCLA when there was other options that would have been probably better, even though he did play better than expected. And the fact that you dedicated almost nothing to your offensive line and to the edge room was very telling. And it came back to bite them. And that's no real indictment on who we're going to cover first, which is their head coach, Mike Vrabel. So Vrabel's done a great job with the Titans since he took over. He has overachieved basically every single year except for this one. I think that the team that they were this year was sort of the team that everyone was expecting them to be early on in Vrabel's career. Not exactly a team going and winning the entire AFC and potentially going on long playoff runs, beating really high-quality teams with high-quality coaches and high-quality cultures. It just didn't look like it was in the cards. And this year they kind of came back down to earth. Again, no fault of his own. I don't know how much outside the general manager it was his decision to not put a focus on the offensive line. Maybe they thought they had the pieces there. Maybe they thought just adding Nicholas Petit-Frere was going to be enough for them, but not really knowing where he was going to fit in. Was he going to be a guard? Was he going to be a tackle? I think really did hurt them. And then Taylor Lewan went down with an injury. Aaron Brewer wasn't playing all year. Ben Jones didn't play all year. I don't think Nate Davis played all year. There was a lot of question marks, and they just didn't have the bodies that they should have to have been prepared for that. Because when you run a team through your running back, that means you need to make sure you not only have quality offensive linemen, but you have the quality depth on the offensive line. And that on the defensive side of the ball, you're able to get after the passer to get that team off the field and not allow the opposing team to go on long, drawn-out drives, because then you have to put the ball in the air, and you just didn't have the bodies at the receiving group to do it, and your quarterback situation was in complete disarray with Tannehill getting hurt, Malik Willis coming in and definitely not being ready, and then you had Joshua Dobbs. I mean, you stole a couple of games, but you really were a team that had overachieved and now has come back down to earth. So when you look at the offensive numbers, you can see they were 13th in rush yards. That is not great. They weren't turning the ball over. When they got into the red zone, they executed because they have Derrick Henry. They have that threat of the run, that RPO threat. But when they weren't doing that, they were doing next to nothing. You look at that, 30th in passing yards, 28th in points, 28th in passing touchdowns, 24th in total touchdowns, 30th in total yards, 27th in sacks. That's a clear offensive line problem. 23rd on third down. That's a sign you can't throw the football. Because when you get into those third and more than fours, you can't run. You have to put the ball in the air and you're not executing. And I think that they need to put a focus on getting an offensive line put together and then I guess getting guys back healthy in the receiving group, maybe getting more effective guys for down and distance situations to scheme up maybe a little bit better, maybe a change with the way that the offense is run in general. And who are you committing to at quarterback? Are you going to get somebody brand new? Is it going to be Ryan Tannehill? Is it going to be Malik Willis? All these things have to be figured out so that way that these types of rankings don't happen again, because this type of performance is why they didn't perform, especially down the stretch at the end of the year. And then you look at their defense, which Vrabel's the ultimate specialist in. They were number one against the run, great against the run, but they were dead last in giving up passing yards. That is in correlation with what you see here with 18th in sacks, 20th in turnovers. They were not forcing opposing offenses to take gigantic risks down the field. They just weren't. Teams were able to pick them apart. Everything was nice and safe. They drove down the field on them. And then they were just throwing the ball into the end zone because the corners and the safeties were being hung out to dry by a complete lack of a pass rush off the edge. You know, you still had Jeffrey Simmons. You still had Danico Autry. But those guys are more the interior guys. Like Autry's kind of like a 5-tech, kind of an interior, kind of an edge. But you want him to be playing, you know, inside the offensive tackle. You don't want him on the edge. That's not where he's at his best. So I think that losing Harold Landry really hurt that. Maybe if they bring him back, it'll improve things. But there's too many factors here where I don't know that one player fixes it all. So maybe you need to look at getting another edge rusher that's more of a pass specialist, and outside of Bud Dupree, so you can maybe get out of that contract. Maybe you're looking for another interior guy, maybe a more traditional nose tackle to help, you know, free up a guy like Jeffrey Simmons more, to free up a Danico Autry a bit more. Maybe you want to get an inside linebacker that's a blitzing specialist to collapse that pocket from the inside. There's a lot of different things they could be doing to help here on the defensive side of the ball. However, one of the biggest issues they're going to have is that they're $23.4 million over the cap to start. Now, they do have a lot of cap flexibility based upon guys that they can release that are high-paid veterans that have been injured and that they didn't really look, it's comfortable to sort of move on from as long as they have some replacements ready to go. And we'll start with their re-signings. You bring back Aaron Brewer and Nate Davis. $12.6 million to bring back both of them, I think, is a great deal. You got to restructure Harold Landry for 10.4, restructure Kevin Byard for 9.3, your two of your best defensive players. And then you actually got some room here with cuts. So you can cut Robert Woods, get $12 million in cap savings. That's not an issue. Taylor Lewan is $14.8 million. He pretty much already announced on Bussin' with the Boys, I think it's called, his podcast, that he's expecting to get cut. So I'm sure there was some sort of conversation that already occurred with him and the front office that said that he was going to be released once the league year officially ended, I think the day after the Super Bowl, to free up that $14.8 million, because they're going to need that. They're going to need that. He can go off and play for somewhere else, finish off his career somewhere else. Austin Hooper, $1.6 million. I mean, sounded like a waste. The rookie that they got, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, was the exact player they hoped that he would be. And I think you can get a more traditional tight end in there as well in the draft. And then kicker Randy Bullock, he's like 90 years old. You could always figure out a kicker once the draft and all that stuff is over. Bring in guys and figure out who's best for you. It's not really that big of a deal, especially because it's like not like you're getting rid of one of the top level kickers like a Justin Tucker or someone like that. These guys are, there's certain teams where kicker and punter are very fluid and easily replaced. There's a bit of a conveyor belt with a lot of teams when it comes to that. And I think it's just about making sure you have the money to spend and then figuring this out after. I think it's just in their best interest. But with that, it leaves them with $16.1 million in spending cap. So now we've kind of addressed their needs already, but we'll go back and address them yet again. They need a wide receiver. They don't really have an alpha wide receiver one. Now, is their offensive scheme necessarily need one? I think every team kind of needs one alpha. Can Treylon Burks step up and be that guy? It's yet to be seen. The tight end position. Do you go out and get a traditional tight end to mix in with what you got out of that rookie, Chiggy, Oza, whatever? But the priority for me is the left tackle position. Figure it out. You got a high draft pick. You got the 11th overall pick. Should look into that. It's a cheaper option than trying to pay someone like Orlando Brown. And then getting an edge rusher, getting a better edge rusher than what you have out of Bud Dupree, who was completely overpaid, who kind of everyone saw that coming. And in case you lose Harold Landry again, you need somebody there that can take over. In the Pittsburgh Steelers one, I talked about Alex Highsmith, who I'm not that high on, but he did what he had to do when he was thrust into edge number one. What they lost was out of the edge number two. He sort of picked up for that edge number one role. Bud Dupree didn't do that. Nobody did that for Harold Landry. So you need to get somebody on the roster that can. But with not a lot of cap room, I think that, you dedicate this free agency to helping out the middle of the field. Keep repairing that run defense in the middle of the field with Shai Tuttle and Raekwon McMillan, who you can get for, dollar store contracts basically, and get guys that can come in, get a decently high snap count into the rotation for the linebackers and the interior defensive line, work in some packages there, and just help the depth up the middle while you dedicate your draft capital to the guys on the edge and to the guys on the offense. And then, because the linebacker, interior defensive line, they are viewed generally as the least valuable of the defensive position. So getting guys that are a good rotation, they're good package guys. And, Mike Vrabel knows how to use guys of all different skill sets and body types and all that. So I think that they'll be in a perfectly fine position by just signing these two guys and then dedicating the rest of it to their draft. So with those signings, it leaves $12.5 million to fill out the rest of the roster and sign your draft picks. I think that's great. There are other opportunities to free up more cap space if you feel the need to. So this is like the worst case scenario for the Titans, because you do have guys like Ryan Tannehill, you do have guys like Bud Dupree, who I think their post June 1st cut cap savings is actually pretty good. So if you feel the need that you don't need either one of those guys, you can actually free that up and then dedicate some of that money in that third wave of free agency, third wave of free agency that you get after the draft. And those are two of the biggest factors there. Is Tannehill staying or is he going? Figure it out. You got to figure that out. You might be able to sneak a draft pick for him. His cap hit isn't that high. You can probably sneak a day 3 pick from a team that maybe has a lot of cap space that might want a veteran in there for this year, and then get another edge. Of course, dedicate some capital to that. But that first pick in this draft has to be your left tackle. You're going to be in a position where at least you anticipate 2 of the top 3 tackles will be available on the board. There's Paris Johnson, there's Peter Skoronski, and there's Broderick Jones. You have to get one of those 3 guys. You have to. That has to be your main priority. Anything else, I think they will come to regret it. There is an outside chance they maybe go and try and grab someone like Jordan Addison. But if you do that, you better be trading down. You better be trading down and then being able to trade back up to make sure that you land that second wave of tackles, and it better be somebody that's on the high end, like a Darnell Wright who sort of flies under the radar. But, with Paris Johnson there, that seems like the most logical guy to grab to be your left tackle of the future, and sort of have him and his college teammate Nicholas Petit-Frere sort of bookending the 2 tackle spots. That, to me, is where they should go. And I think that is one of those teams where don't try to overcomplicate it. Don't try to outsmart yourself. Just do the obvious. And if you do the obvious, then you'll actually probably be able to turn around what was a very lackluster second half of the season and get back to being that overachieving, more consistent team in general next year in a division that's going to be very winnable. And there it is, my 2023 offseason predictions for the Tennessee Titans. Make sure to thumbs up this video if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. I got a whole bunch of other videos that I've done so far with this series. I got other videos on this channel as well that you'll probably enjoy, so go check those out. And I will see you guys next time.